Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the second half of the zoning meeting of the Board of County Commissioners. We are at this time going to proceed, thank you for coming back timely. We are going to proceed at this time with, we have a quorum, don't we? Okay, very good, yes. With Commissioner Bernard. And the microphone is open to any commissioners who wish to ask questions or comment on the previous proceedings. You're recognized, Commissioner Bernard.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. All right. At this moment, I'm going to open it up with a motion, and that is to adopt the ordinance approving item 12, and also that I would add to make the effective date of the ordinance to be on July 1st. And that's my motion, and I'll go over my rationale and my reasoning for the motion.
Well, did you want to have a second before you
I will.
go through your reasoning?
Yes.
Okay, very good. There is a second to your motion by Vice Mayor Marino. And there's also another light on. Why don't we go ahead and recognize?
Can I explain my
Okay,
rationale?
now you may. Go right ahead.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. This issue is an issue that, that's the residents that are here are passionate about the issues. The district commissioner who represent that district is passionate about creating a pathway for the truckers. And, I believe that, some of the residents who came here today said do nothing. And I believe that that is not the appropriate step for us to take, because I think doing nothing would mean that everybody would basically believe that they're living in a limbo. However, I believe that today we should vote on this item today. And then also, there's some residents who came and spoke and said, hey, they're allowed to have 7 semi-trucks there, and this is a compromise. They're legally allowed to be there. This motion would allow those residents who believe that they are legally allowed to be there, they can file a lawsuit, and if a court determine that we are wrong, then we will have to, amend our codes. But however, I believe that delaying the effective date of this gives the residents the opportunity to file a lawsuit. It gives the opportunity for us to work with Solid Waste Authority to see if there are sites that could be addressed within enough time. And it gives the residents who are here and the district commissioner and some of the interested groups the opportunity to figure out if there is a way for us to create some type of a narrowly tailored way to allow some of the truckers to be there. I'm not saying that, this board will support it, but it gives everybody that time and the grace period to figure this thing out. But at least we know that this would be effective July 1st. So this is my motion. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much for filing that motion. And for the second, Commissioner Baxter, you are recognized.
Thank you, Commissioner Bernard. Thank you, Mayor. Questions. So when you say a narrowly tailored, I'm trying to understand what exactly we are saying. I do understand you're saying that it will give the courts time to make a decision.
Mm-hmm.
So that I like. I do like the Are we then saying until then, we don't want to see if we even need to? We can't say grandfather, because staff
Yeah,
doesn't
it's-
agree it was ever allowed. But,
It gives the opportunity for yourself, ITID, the community, to have discussions on a way that we can, if it's possible, to create something, working with staff, to see if there's something that can be done to allow some of the truckers to be there. But I do believe that it is important for us to vote on something that says this will be the law. And, and we delay the effective date. And so in that way, you as the district commissioner gets a chance to work with staff, work with the community to present something to us that we as a board can entertain, because we've heard a lot and we would like to, I know for me, I would like to get more information on seeing what can be done because we've heard the concerns.
thank you, and I agree. I would like to know what happens from staff in the meantime regarding code enforcement, fines, and enforcement of this. What happens in the meantime until July 1st?
Well, I thought about this to really see, do we want to stop some of the code enforcement? But I just think that right now we shouldn't stop code enforcement. We shouldn't stop what staff is working on, because I believe that we want some of the residents to come into compliance. And but I'm okay if the commission would like to stop some of the code enforcement. I'm okay with, we can discuss it as a board. But I just think that what's really important for us is, we need to establish what the rules are going to be. And the residents need to find ways to come into compliance with our rules and with our laws. And so I think that, staff can kind of like figure out a way for us to navigate this, but I just think that, I don't know if I want to pause code enforcement completely, but I'd love to hear from our commissioners or staff to see what can be done in the meantime, because this is, what we're trying to do is create something of a legislative grace to allow the residents to remain there.
And I do support the effective date. I do have, so maybe it may require an amendment, so I needed to ask questions first to see what exactly we are talking about, because I do, in the backup, I was under the impression that we were allowing, as long as it belonged to the person living at the property, whether it was for work purposes or their own business purposes, I was under the impression we were, in this current process, allowing up to 2 16,000-pound commercial vehicles. What if somebody owns a tow truck that weighs 15,000 pounds? They work for another tow company. Does this allow them to bring it home?
Not in this packet, no.
So we haven't addressed, because the confusion that was created is, I believe we, the board, and this is something that I was concerned about when I did my zoning agenda review, gave direction to the effect, and it was translated from commercial and then into just home-based business. So now it only applies to the people who own the business, but if they take home an AT&T truck, an FPL truck, any of those, this doesn't allow for that?
FPL, sheriff, utility companies are subject to different rules, so they wouldn't apply, but it would not allow someone to bring home their work landscape truck or work private contracting truck. That is
Or if
not
they
in
worked
this
for a
package.
plumber, an electrician, electrical
Well, they
company?
could bring home a vehicle less than 12.5 and it wouldn't matter, but it wouldn't let them bring home a work vehicle over 12.5. We drafted this because the folks had come out saying that they wanted to support their businesses, so we drafted it for the home-based business expansion. based on that limited home contractor storage yard, and that was built around the, the home business expansion. So that's how we drafted it. So that's when it's in its right now. But that, again, if the board tells us to add that in during this grace period, we can do another revision and add that in later with a new amendment, if that's the direction.
Would that make a substantial change? That would have to be then,
As part of this particular amendment, I think, regardless of whether it's a substantial change, the language would need to be tinkered with in a way that I'm not sure we can do that on the fly. But I'll also point out that there will be at some point a subsequent cleanup amendment to go through the rest of the code and even the home-based business to kind of clean up inconsistencies. And if and when that comes back, that could be clarified. That's just an option I'm, kind of throwing out there.
And Commissioner Baxter, I do support figuring out a way for us to clarify this language, and as the cleanup or within that time period, that's something that, I'd love to, to work with you and to get more information to see how to do that.
and could we keep the possibility, I guess, then open pending litigation of the cleanup of not grandfathering, but picking a date and anyone prior to that date being allowed to stay? Because I don't believe that any of my commissioners want to see anyone put out on the street. I don't believe any of us want to see
And
people not provide.
Commissioner, I think that what I know for me, I would love for us to, for you to work with the community and work with ITID staff, and then for you to, as you're the one who represents this area, and for us to create something that, not on the fly right now, but that, that we as a board can, digest and then to filter out, and then, but that's something that, I'm willing to, for us to entertain to see how to do that.
That sounds good to me.
All right, Commissioner Baxter, you want to take your light off at this time? I'm going to represent Commissioner Barnett.
Thank you very much, Mayor. My understanding is that with the effective date of July 1st, that creates a 4-month grace period. It seems reasonable. I can certainly support that, but I was wondering if, with the mayor's permission, we could hear from some of the representatives from the Indian Trails Improvement District, from them to see what their opinion is, if this grace period creates any kind of burden upon their citizens. If
I'd love
that's
to hear
allowed.
from Mayor McNicholas, if you don't mind.
Yes, please.
Hold on just one second. Commissioner Barnett, you wanted to hear from the folks at the Indian Trails.
Or their representative.
But then there may be somebody from the other side who would like to rebut that.
I have no problem with
So
that.
understand that if we have one side speak up now, pursuant to your request, that also opens up the opportunity for the other side to speak up. So may I just hold that in abeyance for a few minutes while we hear some other discussion from, or do you want to just put it in right now before
If
any
you think
further
that's best,
discussion?
I can
could
hold that in
wait?
abeyance. That's fine.
Okay, we're going to hold that in abeyance for a while. But know that if there is that discussion from one side, we have to open it up for rebuttal from the other. So, and I think we've heard a lot of public discussion on it. So I'd like to hear more, if you don't mind, Commissioner Barnett, from the other commissioners here. And Commissioner Woodward, you are recognized.
Thank you. Just for my own clarification with this, the amendment or the ordinance that we're voting on, it's not just in District 6, the AR. Can we show where all is AR and where are these changes coming into effect? I think this affects multiple districts as well.
And if I may piggyback on what Commissioner Woodward just said, Ms. Amara, I think it's important that we know if we are doing a selective enforcement on only this area, or if whatever we vote on today will be the same rule of law for the entire county.
As far as the first question for land area that's affected by this amendment, we revised the fences and hedges and the two vehicles up to 16K for everywhere that has a green or a peach on this slide. That would be everywhere with AR/RSA zoning. Oh, actually, no, I'm sorry. This shows the urban suburban tier items out in the glades and in the urban service area. I'm sorry. It's everywhere that's peach in the acreage, Jupiter Farms, Palm Beach Country Estates, Calusa, Santa Rosa Groves, Heritage Farms, Homeland, Deer Run, all of those areas west of that purple line. All of that is ARRSA, Agricultural Residential Rural Service Area zoning. The rural and exurban tier, all of those folks would be able to get the two 16,000-pound vehicles with their home business, and that's what it applies to today. As far as the question from the mayor, I'm sorry.
No, I think that was exactly what Commissioner Woodward was talking about. And with that in mind, since we're going to have a 4-month abeyance of this issue for further discussion, will we in the county be providing information and an opportunity for those folks to opine on this issue, that those areas that will be affected, all those areas that will be affected, that you just mentioned, that is in the ex-urban tier?
As whether or not they could weigh in, we've notified folks in various mechanisms through this amendment, but I know it was discussed by a couple of the public speakers. They thought we fell short in our advertisements and our postings, but we didn't anticipate doing any more additional outreach to those areas unless the board directed, as the Commissioner Bernard is speaking about, some kind of coordination with the truckers, if that is the direction of the board, to coordinate with them specifically on the over 16, that would be the anticipated next step, if the board directs us to do that.
If in fact the motion by Commissioner Bernard passes, then I will at that time direct or ask the board to direct staff to notify everybody who will be affected by this zoning change, for them to have the opportunity to be heard before the county commission before we reach those conclusions that affects their property. This affects people's livelihood and their property. So if we're going to make a decision in July or June or whenever it is.
Madam Mayor, can I weigh in a little bit?
Sure, go ahead.
I think that what I would like for us to do, which is just to limit this to the acreage area, as if the board would like to, we can limit this to just the acreage area that we've been discussing. And then since we were having the 4 months period, then if the other communities, and we provide notice, and if they would like to be included or to change, then we could do that during that time period.
That's exactly what we're talking about, because if we're going to, Commissioner
Bernard.
in this discussion that we're having, if we are going to discuss and determine ordinances and zoning requirements and limitations on a person's property, then that person needs to be notified of their opportunity to be heard at a public hearing. So that is what I am saying. And we can address that as we go through our discussion, because you have a motion and a second. And if that passes, then we need to make sure that everybody in that area that Ms. Amara just noted should be notified that we will be discussing and determining their ordinance for their property. And I think that was also in relation to some of the other commissioners' interests. So with that, I'll recognize Commissioner Weiss. Oh, wait a minute, I'm sorry.
I'm
We have the
going to
attorney.
the attorney
I'm
right now.
sorry,
That's
just
where
one
I'm going.
second. Just 1 second, Commissioner Weiss. Mr. Stone.
So as far as ULDC amendments go, many of them affect the entire county. So there are certain requirements under statute for notice, advertised notice. You're certainly more, you are capable of authorizing or requiring additional notice, but considering that so many of your amendments do affect such a wide area, I just wanted to point out that there are regulations which affect properties throughout the county constantly when we're adopting amendments. And so if this is a policy that you're considering to be applicable to ULDC amendments in general, it will, I would imagine the cost and the burden on doing that is very large. I could let staff speak more to that. I'm not trying to dissuade you. I'm just trying to give a little context.
So in other words, what you're saying, Mr. Attorney, is that we don't necessarily need to notify the people whose property will be affected by changes that we make on the board.
So under statute, your requirements for adopting ordinances, ULDC amendments have to follow the statutory requirements for
Correct.
normal ordinances.
Correct.
And that would be a newspaper advertisement. And again, you have the ability to adopt local, requirements in addition to that.
As long as we follow the law and give everybody whatever the requirement is under the law, that notice, an opportunity to be heard, as you know these words from law, then we will be following our statutory
Sure,
requirements.
and then when you have an agenda, you have to
Absolutely.
give notice on the agenda and the agenda item and everything in addition
Very
to that.
good, very good, that's perfect. Thank you. All right, now Commissioner Weiss.
So my question was for our attorney. If we were to make a change and limit this to just one section of the county, would that cause an issue with what we've already published?
Well, it sounds like the motion is to adopt the amendment as written, which affects the entire AR, right?
Yeah, the AR RSA shown on this slide. This slide's easier to see than the other
So
slide,
it doesn't
Jupiter
sound,
Farms.
yeah, it doesn't sound like anything's being proposed to change that.
Unfortunately, I thought
So
that's what Commissioner Bernard just said.
I'd like to, because I'd like for the commissioners to weigh in, so that way we can make a decision on whether or not we want this, or if.
I think
Can
I
we-
understand. You're proposing to adopt the amendment. Subsequently, the period until effectiveness, those negotiations you're discussing, you would want to limit that to the acreage. Is that what you're referring to?
Well, that's what I'd like for us as a board to, I'd like to hear from my fellow commissioners to see if that's how we would like to go, or to keep it the entire AR.
Well, I have something to say if I don't see any other lights. I think that, I think this is something that needs to be discussed openly, and I'm not sure if we are prepared at this time. This is if we determine certain ordinances that will be affecting all of the AR and in the county, then that is an issue that we certainly need to discuss. And now that I started speaking, other people want to speak also, which is usually what happens. So I believe that Commissioner Baxter, you were the first light on. So I'll hold my rest of the comments to hear you from you. Thank you.
There were, I guess, for me, several misconceptions. One of them being, I thought this would also include take-home vehicles for businesses. I didn't realize we were updating all the conversations in the news, all the conversations in newspapers have been basically around trucking. I don't think that our residents really know currently we are changing such a large section of home-based business and allowances and disallowances because that hasn't been the topic of conversation. Everything we've seen published, everything out there. And so to a large extent, I support what the mayor is saying. I do think, it hasn't been clear, and I think we have kind of really convoluted trucking, home-based business, AR. Everyone, even speaking today, seemed a little confused about exactly what to support, not support going forward. I do still would like to continue discussions. I just don't know what we do with the in-between time between now and July 1st?
Commissioner Woodward?
Thank you, Mayor. I agree. It seems some of the comments today seemed somewhat confused, although in my agenda review, we went over all of this and what we were discussing, the home-based businesses, all of the parameters. So it was clear to me what we were voting on. And in my discussions, because from the beginning, I wanted to find a way for owner-operators who live in a homesteaded house, they have the CDL license, they own the truck, a way to find for them, which is kind of where all of this has really gone sideways, because this has grown into a much larger issue where we're almost Airbnb yards. I mean, we don't know what's coming. It's quite the mess. So that's why it was in my discussion in agenda review, it became clear, at least to me, that fixing this particular issue with the truckers, the specific truckers that we're trying to help, it's not a way to do it through code. It's not a way to change it in the ULDC, because trying to do it in the code, it's just, we need something that we can do more of a case-by-case basis, where people can come in individually, prove who they are, show their truck, have their property, like their road, it can fit. They're not going to have to park in a swell. I mean, there's a number of things that would come from this, some sort of a special parking permit. I'm not using legal terms here, I don't know, but, a way that's not part of putting it into the code, because putting this into code, again, this is not something I think that we can fix in this process. We need to, what staff has put together in my discussions, I agree with. I like what's here. Not that we may need to have our own glitch bill and, coming forward with this is something that we can address in time. We can have amendments to it, but settling this through code to allow certain very good neighbors who exist out there to find a way to park their truck in their home, I think we need a different way to do that that's not changing in our code, putting it in the ULDC. This, to me, what we're doing here, if we vote on this, and then we move forward with a separate issue that's a separate permitting process, whatever. And I've had conversations, there are other areas that do something like this where it's not a code change. And I think for me, that's where I bumped up on this. Putting it into code is the problem. So we vote on this today and then move forward with a different case-by-case basis that staff, hopefully, maybe we can give direction after this is voted on, then give staff direction to bring us an option for individuals, whether it's a letter, if it's a letter from their employer that they need to drive this truck home. So some sort of way that we can do a case-by-case analysis so it's not what it has become. And I think the best way moving forward is to stick with the code changes, cleaning this up, allowing for amendments in the future, but then having a separate process altogether for individual truckers.
Okay. Vice Mayor Marino.
I was going to make the motion to approve this immediately with maybe a 6-month come into compliance. I'm not, if the motion is to, in 4 months, find a way to grandfather in tractor trailers, I am not seconding the motion.
Well, Madam Vice Mayor, the motion, which is, the other part in regards to what would happen with the district commissioner is not part of the motion whatsoever. This is the motion, which is to create the new rules and then for it to be effective July 1st. And, during that time period, I'm just commenting in terms of, what I would like to see as a district commissioner.
So with this motion, we are not allowing anything over 16,000 pounds,
That is correct.
correct? And we've given we've been given plenty of information. We've had plenty of input from the community. I do not see, sorry, I'm not feeling well. I think we need to stick to the 16,000 pounds. I will not vote in favor of anything that goes over 16,000 pounds in the future. We're already opening it up. We really should have gone to 14,000 pounds, which was the 12,500 was in that class. and went up to 14,000, not up to 16. So this is a stretch already. I will stick with the second of the motion, but I will never, not going forward, be in favor of tractor trailers. And let me also make it clear. Commercial vehicles are not tractor trailers in the sense of, if you have a home-based business and you're a plumber, you're not driving a 20 or 30,000 pound vehicle. You're driving a truck that has your equipment in it. A home-based business for a plumber, an electrician, an HVAC, or whatever, you should be able to have your truck there. You should be able to use your home as your home-based business. I had a home-based business for years. I was a realtor. But for those that say tractor trailers were allowed out there, there will always be a dispute about that. Our staff will always say that was never the case. For those that have tractor trailers out there, we're giving you 4 months to figure out something else to do with it. And we are fast tracking, we are doing what a county is allowed to do by expediting permitting for someone who wants to put 173 parking spaces on Southern Boulevard. And maybe have the opportunity for Solid Waste Authority to open up their 5 acres. And I believe, Mr. Palowitz, are you still here? Thank you. Our representative from the Solid Waste Authority is here if anybody has questions for him. I think as a county, we're doing what we're supposed to do. We are not going to build a facility. That is not in our purview. We cannot give one business an upper hand over another business. So I would not be in favor of building a facility. And I hope that the rest, I've been pretty clear, and I hope that the rest of the commission understands my position. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Commissioner Weiss?
Thank you. I appreciate your comments, Mayor, but I have to disagree. We need to vote on this today. We need to move this forward and put this to bed because this has been going on for a long time. And I think this is like the 6th or 7th hearing we've had on this, I think this year, or between last year and this year. I also like to suggest, too, we've got land out at 20 Mile Bend. I understand we just got a letter from the Sheriff's Department that their land is now available. So maybe we could look at offering some of that land out for somebody wanting to site a parking facility. I mean, it's clear that there's a need for parking of these vehicles, but in a residential neighborhood is not where they belong. I think I was very clear in both my article that I wrote and also in the letter that was read at the last meeting. I think it's bad public policy that there's just, and we've heard about the potential impacts that there could be, so I'm not going to reiterate that. But I do understand there's a need. I'm the one who brought it up to SWA about using that property. While I was up in Washington with Commissioner Baxter, we did every briefing we had with our Congress people. I was asking for money to help us be able to help the trucking industry. So this is not about the trucking industry, but this is about making sure that residential communities are residential communities and not turned into industrial areas. So I will support your motion. I was willing to, I originally thought 90 days was a reasonable period of time to transition, but I also agree with you that an extra 30 days is not too long, so I will go ahead and support that. I will not support not having code enforcement continuing to enforce. There are a lot of dangerous situations. We've seen countless pictures of very large vehicles parked in places where they shouldn't be, making it dangerous for other people on the road. And these roads are not built to accommodate, they're 20-foot roads, they're not built to accommodate vehicles at large. And so I could not support not allowing code to continue to do the great work that they do. And that's my comment.
Did you want to make
No, there's no
amended
motion. He's got a
motion?
motion. The motion he made is fine.
Commissioner Baxter?
As I said, I like the motion. I would like to see us make sure we add take-home vehicles as an option, if all would be
I
open
can't
to
do
that
that
amendment.
today. I can only do that if the board directed us to do a subsequent amendment. I couldn't add take-home vehicles today because we have no research to narrow in that scope, and it's not been in any of the drafts that we've published to date. Take-home vehicles is not part of this package unless the board gives us direction to do a subsequent change.
Ms. Amara, may I interject for a minute? Could we, as a board, ask staff to review certain things like other commissioners have brought up for you to study, so that when we come back at a date certain that was noted by Commissioner, that we would be able to, you would have the time also to review those issues. And I think one is with regard to the take-home vehicles, one is regard to, what land is available for folks to, whatever other issues that the commission wishes to bring up, such as code enforcement now. Maybe those could be added to the motion by, Commissioner Bernard, so that you can have the time to study them. Does that sound okay with you, Commissioner Bernard?
The motion.
Actually, I'm asking you, Ms. Amara.
Ideally, the motion on the floor is for the ordinance that's proposed, and any subsequent direction could be a separate motion and discussion and direction on and anything that you like. But the motion on the floor is for this particular ordinance with an effective date of July 1st. And then after you vote and motion on that, if you want to give us direction to do another amendment, to come back with the Solid Waste Authority, to whatever it is that you like.
Okay, very good. All right, thank you.
With that,
Go ahead, Commissioner Baxter.
so yeah, yes, I do like this, and we'll wait for subsequent directions for the other
Issues.
correct. As far as the trucking, so trying to avoid some situations, I did like actually Commissioner Woodward's thought with the individual permitting process that we had discussed on an individual basis, a case by case with verifications and potentially decals, however we can make it easier for code enforcement to do and to kind of take a look at that. Also, I wanted to know, because Commissioner Woodward had mentioned something about not a ULDC change, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but how would this be, how would we accomplish that without a ULDC change?
No, my question when I was talking to staff is if we were to move forward with some sort of like a permitting process or something along that lines, we wouldn't be doing a change in the code overall. This is something that could be done separately. It's not part of actually changing code, as I understood, but please correct me. We talked about it.
I think the challenge with this, what's on the table, well, what was on the table last month is it allowed every property owner in the acreage to have 2 semis with pretty much just an administrative process. Most of the time, when the board adopts a change, just like we did for limited pet boarding or was done for limited contractor storage yard, there's still a subsequent approval process. And so the first draft that we had presented was a path forward was proposed as a Class A approval and a Type 2 waiver if they didn't meet the access requirements. I think that's what and that's why this has been so challenging, is because how do we grandfather the folks in? Well, not the right word, but path forwardize the folks that are here and present without creating unintended consequences by putting something in the code that gives everybody essentially permitted 2 semis, and there is an extremely difficult way to monitor that or to there's consequences that we don't know, whereas when a typical approval process through a Class A or through something else allows more control and more notification to neighbors and something like that. So I think that's in the context that you were speaking, is that, what was on the table last month was just a administrative, everybody gets 2. And if we did get direction to come back and to meet with the stakeholders and theoretically come back with something, the grace period, the whatever, that would be on a case-by-case basis. I don't know if Cindy has more experience within this, because she did this in Miami-Dade.
Well, not exactly the same thing.
Go right ahead, you're recognized, Cindy.
Thank you, Mayor. If I may, my understanding is after this vote is taken, and then direction would be for staff to prepare, to do a study, to come back with some type of, whether it's a permitting program or whatever that context is, to see if we can find a path forward for people under certain parameters. We can absolutely, with your direction, we can absolutely do something like that at the end of that 4-month period or during that 4-month period. That's not a problem. We can look at whatever other options are out there and present those options to the board.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
All right, very good. Commissioner Baxter, you're still on the floor? You wanna-
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you, and if everyone wants to vote on this issue before further discussion, I would be in favor.
We have Commissioner Weiss who wants, oh, I'm sorry. Commissioner
Madam Mayor,
Bernard,
I
yes.
know Commissioner Barnett had asked a question, so we want to make sure before we vote that we address
No, we're
his-
not voting yet.
No, so we address his
We will
concern.
take care of, I'll take care of Commissioner Barnett. And just 1 second, Commissioner Barnett. You can keep your light on, it's okay. Commissioner Weiss.
Yeah, I just want to go ahead and call the question.
Well, I explained to Commissioner Barnett that we were going to hold his question in abeyance, and I don't see any, let me ask Commissioner Barnett if he wishes to proceed on it.
So when there's a call to question, it's not debatable, and it has to be voted on immediately if there's a second.
So there is a second to call the question without,
And if you get a 2/3 vote, then you'd have to proceed to the vote.
okay, all right.
Mayor, may I be recognized? Who is
Yes.
the second to calling the question?
Commissioner Woodward. Okay, so there is a motion and a second on the floor, and maybe we should have a roll call since it's a 2/3.
Commissioner Barnett?
Yes, like I said, I could hold my question in abeyance. That's fine. Yes.
Commissioner Baxter?
Yes.
Commissioner Bernard?
Yes.
Commissioner, Vice Mayor Marino? Yes. Commissioner Woodward?
Yes.
Mayor Sachs?
Yes.
And Commissioner Weiss?
Yes.
All right, so at this point, we have a motion on the floor, we have a second, and let's have a roll call for the vote on the motion as stated. Go right ahead, clerk.
Commissioner Baxter?
Yes.
Commissioner Bernard?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Marino? Yes. Commissioner Woodward?
Yes.
Commissioner Barnett?
Yes.
Commissioner Weiss?
Yes.
And Mayor Sachs?
Yes. Okay, see that it passes unanimously. And at this point, does anybody else wish to bring anything up about this issue? Seeing Commissioner Baxter, you're recognized.
Well, we had discussed giving direction, so now we need to
Give
follow
direction.
through with that direction. So just working, in the meantime, finding a path forward with the residents, limiting it to the acreage only, limiting, things we had discussed with this permitting, a simple permitting process of sorts so that we can verify that it's not, no one, including myself, wants space in the acreage getting rented out to other people. So that is a definite must for me. So whether we're just verifying, who is driving the truck, we're verifying, who lives at the property and making sure the two match up, I think is a great, it's a good policy to be able to do that. And also, we will, I think we were given that July 1 to see what was happening at courts. I would like this to come back after potential hearing to discuss and see, because I don't want to just tell everyone, all right, you're out, without actually discussing that first.
Thank you, Commissioner Baxter. Commissioner Woodward, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. And if I could add, because in my discussions with staff, it was brought up that it's not just parking code violations. So whatever the path forward, the permitting process as it goes forward, it needs to be where the property does come into 100% compliance across the board, whatever code violations are there, that needs to be a part of this.
An attorney, Mr. Stone.
Along those notes, this is just a question for staff. Isn't there something in the code already that is part of a application process? Somebody has pending code violations, there's a consideration of that?
Consideration of what? If there's a pending?
I'm asking if there's I thought that there was already a code provision in the ULDC talking about what happens when there's pending code violations during the application process.
Well, I think the direction is, we still don't have a path forward, so I think the direction is to come up with a path forward and present it back to the board before July 1st. None of the folks can apply to have a commercial vehicle because we just didn't create that. There'd be no development order to issue on any of these properties.
I think you're talking about if there is violations.
Allow a development order to move forward if there's a pending code violation. Unless it's to bring the property into compliance.
Yeah, and to expand on that concept, staff exhausted every avenue that we could possibly do on a wholesale level, but I think really the next steps is to sit down with code enforcement and the actual 56 commercial vehicle folks with the violations, and on, as you know, Cindy said, and as Commissioner Woodward said as well, you know, looking at those properties in their totality and you know, having more dialogue with them before we come back to you, if that is the will of the board to continue on that path forward for the acreage.
Mayor, if I may.
Hold on just one sec. Go right ahead, Mr. Rutter.
And I just wanted to clarify with the board, hearing the points made, I'm sorry, Commissioner Baxter, if you had additional ones to add as well, but it was to be clear on the expectation the board has prior to that July, so I'm anticipating no later than June, the zoning hearing, to bring back to you a framework addressing all of these points, and you'll give us direction, because there'll be probably some multiple options on some of them. You would give us direction at that meeting no later than June to proceed with code changes. Is that part of the expectation on direction?
Mr. Rutter, I know,
Go ahead,
Madam
yeah, go
Mayor,
ahead.
I would prefer it to be before June, because just in case, if there is any change that we need to make to the code, then we would need 2 hearings. And so I don't know, just in case we may need that, I don't know if we just do it before June. I think we need to do it before June.
Find that balance between giving our folks enough time to do it. I'm looking as May viable.
The key, we already wrote a draft and multiple drafts. The key is getting all of the players and the truckers together. We had a meeting once at the acreage, but we really need on a case-by-case basis with all those active code violations to have one-on-one conversations with them, looking at all of their violations and seeing what words work for them and on a case-by-case basis and bringing that forward. So you know, would be an Article 4 revision, so that means if you want to adopt it in June, that is June 2nd reading, May 1st reading, March permission to advertise. That's pretty tight, but I don't know how many people we have 56 code violations. We'd start meeting with them.
Trying to anticipate for the board, because I think we want to come back to you to make sure. We'll probably have a couple options on any one point, and we would want your direction, go down path 1, not path 2, or something to that effect. So in my mind, I'd like a meeting to get that direction, so we write the words that you want written, and we do that once. So if I could offer that we will come back to you for direction no later than May.
How about, let me, just one second, Mr. Commissioner Bernard, since you picked the date and we voted on it, is there, would it be fair to have a later date so that gives us time, like you said, to give a couple of readings and also to give an opportunity for the district commissioner as well as for staff to meet with the people involved?
You know, this thing's been going on for too long, and
All
it's
right,
just,
it's okay.
and I think it's just,
All right,
I think that we want to work with the truckers, work with the district commissioner. I don't want to change it. Let's stick with what we have, and then we can make a decision right away. You know, so Patrick Rudder, make it happen.
We will develop a schedule that will get to you beforehand, because we will have an initial meeting to take your direction. We'll present you the options. I just don't want to bring it the first time to you in code form where you see it that way. So we'll develop and bake into the schedule a way to get to you to seek direction and then write the code words.
Perfect, thank you.
well, that's been resolved. That's good. And Vice Mayor Marino.
Thank you. We keep saying truckers. What do we mean by truckers? Do we mean vehicles over 16,000 pounds?
Yeah, this amendment that was just approved captures everybody under 16,000 pounds. So when the code violation cases that we have, some of them have 10 vehicles that are less than 16,000 pounds. They'll be down to 2. But there are 2 types of generally, what's left of the code violations are semi-truck haulers, where they have a couple semis and a bunch of trailers. There's those. There's companies that are running dump truck companies. There's those folks. And then there's like car haulers out there and tow truck companies that are also storing their towed vehicles on their cars. So we have a little bit of everything, which is why, you know, to talk about generically truckers and 56 different active code violations, you know, we need to, at this point, start talking to them that who are we talking about? The semis? Because the semi might come home once a week, but the dump truck's coming home every day. So, and then we do have folks out there who are hauling dirt and then bringing it home and putting it on their properties. And they can't, nothing that we've proposed is turning your yard into soil storage. You know, that's why I'm suggesting that our next step as staff is to stop writing this as a wholesale, but to meet with those 56 cases on a case-by-case basis and see what we have. Because I don't think we can successfully draft language that will solve the 56 code violation cases and let everyone have 2 semis or 2 dump trucks. And I don't think that board's going to like that if we draft it again.
I am not in favor of a code that takes care of 56 people at the cost of 14,000 other lots. What we've passed today is 16,000 pounds, period. I do not, again, I will say this again clearly, that is the maximum that we are allowing. We're not allowing more than that. Thank you. And when we say truckers, I think you need to use the term vehicles over 16,000 pounds.
All right, Commissioner Baxter.
If we are giving different direction, what do we need to do?
I can assure you, Commissioner, we're not going to bring the exact same thing back to you. We will give you as many options as we can find.
Very good.
Options.
I'm sorry,
But are
would you
these
speak into the
options
record?
to include the over 16,000 pounds?
Yes, Commissioner.
Is what I'm
That's
That's what
the
we
direction
understand
I
the direction
understood.
today to be, yes.
Okay, thank you.
That's not what we voted on.
No, the vote is.
No, the vote, no, I believe, Vice Mayor, the vote does not include that 16,000, but this is the ancillary motion to instruct or direct staff to look at various different areas that may be affected by our vote today. And one of them will be to, obviously, to include that tonnage of weight for truckers. But that is not what we voted on today, on the motion. Okay. Commissioner Woodward?
Thank you. Just to be clear, when I was giving direction and conversation that I had with staff, was there were the 56 violation or 56 parcels that have the violations. It's more than 56 violations. But this was for them to have time to do a case-by-case analysis of those 56 and then bring back to us potential options based on their findings of those 56.
That's correct.
And there may be a handful of those that we're in agreement, or maybe not. I want them to find out. And the only way we can do this is if they actually have the time to talk to the 56 and then give us an analysis.
That's correct. That's correct. Commissioner Baxter?
Would you also like to allow any current truckers over 16,000 pounds that aren't currently under code violations to also be able to partake in that?
I think you can just, excuse me, Commissioner, I think what you can do is just add that to what our wonderful staff here is going to be reviewing in that second direction for them.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah, so
And
let's
I
add
just
that.
want to add something. We're putting a lot of work on code enforcement. And I think what we need to look at is whether we need to expand code enforcement. And we have a lot of regulatory issues that are going to come up as to the contents of trucks, as to who owns them, as to whether they actually own they own the property. So I would like for you to also look at whether we need an expansion of code enforcement and whether we need additional monies for code enforcement.
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor. I can tell you, I believe April 18th, 16th or 18th, 16th is when we have the workshop for code enforcement.
Good.
So we will be addressing staffing and all
Absolutely.
kinds of issues at that meeting.
Absolutely, because we can't expect them to take care of all these issues. If there is no other commissioner who wishes to be heard, I know that Commissioner Baxter wants to be heard right now.
Well, I
Go right
just
ahead.
ask you, we never addressed the take-home vehicle direction portion of this. So let's
If you
add
want
that
to,
as
go
well.
ahead and add that,
Okay, thank you.
okay? No other commissioner wishes to be heard? Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Barnett.
I just want to be clear myself with regards to this path forward-izing of the folks who live on the 56 parcels that are currently in violation. This direction that we're giving to you, I wanted to make sure that we're not trying to do a sneaky end around with regards to the ordinance change we just voted on.
This would be in addition to anything that was approved today and separate. This would, and again, just for the record, to clarify, they were looking at the acreage area, not the entire area. And that component would include, and to recap, looking at the 56 code violation property owners now, looking at options for take-home vehicles, for looking at options for the existing trucking companies and those new ones. And, of course, after we meet with the stakeholders who are the people who have the commercial vehicles over 16,000 pounds, there's going to have to be a notification process as well. There's, Wendy guesstimates it's about $10,000 if we send a letter to everybody in the acreage. If it's 68 cents a stamp, which is not the bulk rate. But, at some point, we need to start with the folks that are out there, like we started like a year ago, and then bring those proposals not only to the board, but then out to everyone.
What I'm saying is, I'd like to have a better understanding, and I'd love to hear from my fellow commissioners as well. I want to make sure this direction we're giving you is not a way to undo the ordinance change we just voted on.
No.
No.
Not at all. Not,
The
is
ordinance
my
is-
understanding, and I guess the staff would be the ones who would respond to that.
Yeah,
Ms.
it wouldn't
Amaro?
undo what we just did.
Which, to clarify for the board, which is why I'd like to come back to you when we have the ideas developed, not in a strike through and underline format, to talk to the board so you understand what you would be directing then to be written. Treat that as a permission to advertise event. So that's the one that we would probably be targeting an April-ish date, April, May.
Very good. I see that attorney's light has just turned off, so
I
I'm
was-
going to quickly adjourn. No, go right ahead. So would you, very good. I want to thank everybody. I want to thank staff. I want to thank the. Oh, yes, we have comments, of course. And I'm sure that, all right, Mr. Redder, do you have any comment? Mr. Attorney?
No comments.
Okay, so we will go from, why don't we go from left to right? Commissioner Barnett? Okay, Commissioner Woodward? No comment, and Commissioner Weiss?
Thank you. At last week's Lake Worth Lagoon, both at the Lake Worth Lagoon Initiative and at the Water Resource Task Force meeting, we had discussion in regards to the operations of the lake. If you're not aware, They are going to be sending water out of the lake. Lake level is too high. It should have never gotten this high. We are still operating under LORS 2008, which is the schedule in which the lake is supposed to be operated in. Unfortunately, that schedule was not adhered to, and lake levels are now, we're at a point where they're going to be releasing both to Caloosahatchee, to St. Lucie, and into the lagoon. The recommendation came from the Water Resource Task Force that the board send a letter and to the appropriate parties, which would be South Florida Water Management District, and to the Army Corps of Engineers, that they need to go ahead and follow the schedule that is legally binding, that is continuing to legally be in place today, I should say. Follow that schedule. Additionally, a recommendation was there's been modeling that's been done both to St. Lucie and to Caloosahatchee in regards to what happens when fresh water from Lake O is sent into those estuaries. No such modeling exists for Lake Worth Lagoon. So we're also asking that they do the same modeling for Lake Worth Lagoon to understand the impacts of fresh water being released into the lagoon. So that I would like to ask that we give that direction.
All right. Did you understand the direction to the staff? Mr.
Yes, we
Rutter?
will. We'll prepare a letter for the mayor's signature.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Commissioner Bernard.
Well, I'm
sorry.
definitely not Commissioner Barnett.
No, you're not.
But we share the same birthday.
Do you really?
Yes.
Oh, I knew that. I could feel it, I think.
So within a week, so.
It's so cool.
No comments, Madam Mayor.
All right, thank you. And Commissioner Baxter.
To question, so are we asking to spend money on the study for the lagoon that Commissioner Weiss had mentioned? Is that what we're asking for?
We're asking them to do it,
To just do the study? Our
to
staff?
create the modeling. No, South Florida Water Management District.
To do, oh, okay. Sounds good to me. I just wanted to clarify that, so thank you. And also, I wanted to know if without objection, we could just allow a 10-minute presentation at the workshop from somebody. It's a housing initiative. We're trying to get some more workforce housing out in the Pahokee area specifically. And it was brought to my attention. It's something that for the past 6 months, hasn't really come to a resolution. I think we really need some housing, and I would like to have my fellow commissioners come up to speed on that. I know we have a full workshop schedule, and they have promised to limit it, so it doesn't take up too much time.
No, of course not. I think it'd be very, very important.
It is in regards to the, I believe, One North Lake project it's called, or First North Lake project.
Certainly we will add that.
So I appreciate that. And that's all for now.
Very good.
Thank you so much, staff. Lisa, I know you especially have worked super hard on all of these code changes. And I don't always express it enough, but I am very grateful for what you do, what you put together, and speaking and continuing to speak with the residents. So just thank you, and everyone that also helps her.
Sorry for you. I feel your pain. Vice Mayor Marino.
Thank you. I would actually like to ask for a workshop in the future that has to do with the nonprofits that we partner with. I think we need to have a better background of who they are, what they do, how they spend their money, how they spend our money, where they get their resources from, and what they're doing in the community. I met with the folks from Center for Family Counseling last week. They have some great initiatives, and I know we partner with them already, but I don't think that some of these agencies that we donate to actually do presentations for us. So I would like to see a workshop like that in the future, if that would be okay with the rest of the board.
I think it's excellent. In the state of Florida, there are certain regulations that before a nonprofit can receive state funding, there is a certain limitation on how much of the money they get is spent on, quote, administrative costs. that doesn't go directly to the people that they are proposing or to advocating for. So I think we can, when we do the study, Vice Mayor, I think we can also lean on what the state has already done for some of these nonprofits. I think it's an excellent idea. Thank you.
It's not a study, it's just a workshop of them presenting to us, letting us know what they do and how they partner with us.
Well, I would like to second that and to us knowing what their money, where their money goes, especially the money that comes from government, local government, because that's taxpayers' money. And I think part of this workshop could be, if you don't mind, to look at how much of their funds go into administrative costs and how much goes directly to the people. And if there's no other, I'd just like to thank everybody for being here and for being heard. It's a long day for you as well. And I want to thank our amazing staff for the work that they do, which has been tremendous. And I'd like to thank my colleagues for being so attentive and taking such a short lunch. With that, there's nothing other before the board. We are adjourned. Thank you all.